Hey everyone, welcome back. We're tackling a listener request today, one that we've been getting a lot lately.
Yeah.
It's all about this invisible world of EMF radiation.
It's fascinating.
From all our devices. And everyone wants to know, is it actually harmless? Or is it like a hidden health risk? So to do this, we dove into a ton of research, some reports, even some practical guides to help us figure all this out.
What's really interesting is that we're not just talking about like your cell phone here.
Right.
It's like your entire house is just like this symphony of EMF frequencies.
Oh, wow.
From your Wi-Fi to smart meters.
Okay.
It's all kind of layered on top of each other.
You're making me look around my living room a little differently now.
Yeah.
But let's back up for a sec. I think a lot of people, when they hear radiation,
Right.
they immediately think danger, like Chernobyl.
Exactly.
The serious stuff.
Yeah, and that's where it's super important to understand the different types of radiation that we encounter every day. So like when you go to the dentist and you get an X-ray,
Right.
those are using ionizing radiation, which is very high energy.
Okay.
It can actually break apart atoms in your body.
Oh, wow.
But what we're talking about when we talk about the tech that we use, this is non-ionizing radiation.
Okay.
It's lower energy and has longer wavelengths.
So that means my phone's not going to give me superpowers.
Probably not.
Darn.
But here's the catch. Even though it's not like actively breaking apart atoms,
Right.
there's a growing body of research looking at what kind of impact this constant low-level exposure could be having on us.
From this non-ionizing EMF. Right.
Exactly.
And that's what's got people worried. I think we've got phones in our pockets, Wi-Fi routers blasting all the time. And then you mentioned smart meters.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people even realize.
Yeah.
Those things on the side of the house that track your energy use, those emit EMF too.
They do.
Seriously.
It's all about wireless communication these days. So even those, seemingly innocent Bluetooth headphones you're probably wearing right now,
Oh my gosh.
they're also emitting some level of these radio frequency waves.
Hold on. Even these little earbuds.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like I'm in one of those sci-fi movies where they reveal we're all living in a simulation.
Well, maybe not quite that dramatic.
Okay.
But it is important to remember that we've always been exposed to natural sources of EMF radiation, like the sun.
That's true.
What's different now is the sheer volume of artificial EMF
Got it. Okay.
that we're surrounded by.
So we're bathed in this invisible energy, but how is it actually affecting us? Does it just like pass right through?
Some of it does, but some of it interacts with our bodies in ways scientists are still trying to fully understand.
Okay.
I mean, think about a microwave oven
Yeah.
that uses high-intensity EMF to heat things up.
Right. And I know there are regulations on how much our phones can emit so we don't end up like cooking our brains
Exactly.
while we're texting. Speaking of which, can we talk about that SAR value you see on phones? What does that even mean?
Good question. SAR stands for specific absorption rate.
Okay.
And it's basically a measure of how much radio frequency energy from your phone is actually absorbed by your body tissues.
So lower SAR, the better.
Generally, yes.
Okay.
But what's really got researchers digging deeper is what happens at these lower levels of exposure over long periods of time.
Okay.
So even if it's not enough to like cause heating, could there be other subtle effects happening?
Okay, so now we're getting to the heart of it.
Right.
What are some of those potential effects that they're studying? I know the research can get pretty complex, but I think our listeners can handle it if we break it down for them.
I think so too. One of the biggest areas of concern is cell damage.
Okay.
Studies are looking at how EMF might be causing something called oxidative stress.
Okay.
So imagine this. You cut open an apple and leave it on the counter.
Right.
What happens?
It turns brown.
Exactly.
Right.
That's oxidation.
Okay.
And that's happening in our bodies too.
Yeah.
It's a natural process, but too much oxidation can damage our cells.
Wow.
And even our DNA.
Okay.
And some researchers think that EMF might be speeding up that oxidation process.
So it's like rust on a car, but happening inside our bodies.
Yes.
Essentially.
That's not a great visual.
No, it's definitely something scientists are taking seriously.
Uh-huh.
Then there's the potential neurological effects.
Okay.
There was this one study that found that exposure to cell phone radiation actually changed how the brain uses glucose,
Wow.
which is its main fuel source.
So my phone could be messing with my brain's fuel supply.
Yeah, potentially.
This is getting a little scary.
It's definitely intriguing.
Yeah.
And more research is needed to really figure out what these changes mean.
Okay, so let's talk about sleep.
Right.
I feel like everyone I know has noticed they sleep worse when they're using their phone right before bed.
Ah.
Is EMF a factor there?
You're right. That's a big one.
Yeah. Our bodies have this natural sleep-wake cycle.
Right.
And it's regulated by this hormone called melatonin.
Yeah.
And EMF exposure, especially at night, seems to interfere with our melatonin production.
Interesting.
And of course, the blue light from screens doesn't help either.
Right. It's like a double whammy.
Exactly.
I've even read some research about EMF and potential effects on fertility.
That's another important area of research, although, again, the research is still pretty new in this area.
Oh.
There is some evidence suggesting that prolonged exposure to cell phone radiation, especially for men, may affect sperm health.
Mm-hmm.
And for women, constantly carrying a phone close to the body could have hormonal implications as well.
Okay, so we've got potential effects on our cells, our brains, our sleep, even our reproductive health.
Right.
Kind of a lot to process.
Uh-huh.
But I'm sure there's a lot of debate about how serious these risks actually are.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The scientific community doesn't have all the answers yet. There have been some large studies like the Interphones study,
right,
which found a possible link between heavy cell phone use and certain types of brain tumors.
Wow.
And the National Toxicology Program, they found that high levels of RF radiation caused tumors in rats.
So there is some evidence suggesting potential harm.
There is.
But I'm guessing this is where the more research is needed part comes in.
Exactly. A lot of these studies involve really high levels of exposure.
Right.
Or very specific types of radiation that might not actually reflect how we're using these devices in everyday life.
Got it.
And then on the flip side, you have organizations like the FCC and the World Health Organization that maintain that current exposure levels from these devices are safe.
So it sounds like science is still on the fence about this.
Right.
But in the meantime, what are we supposed to do? Throw out all our devices and live off the grid?
Not necessarily. Even with all this debate going on, there are things that we can do to minimize our exposure just in case. Think of it like taking out an insurance policy on your health.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
So let's get to the good stuff. What are some practical things we can do?
One of the simplest things is just using wired connections whenever possible.
Okay.
So like Ethernet for your computer, wired headphones instead of Bluetooth.
Right.
That eliminates the EMF radiation from those devices completely.
That's an easy change.
It is.
What else?
Well, think about how you use your phone.
Okay.
Can you use speakerphone more often?
Huh.
Or a wired headset?
Yeah.
Instead of holding it right up to your ear.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm definitely one of those people who presses it right against my ear.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to think about investing in a cute wired headset.
There you go.
For fashion and for EMF protection.
Uh-huh. And speaking of habits, remember those smart devices we talked about?
Yeah.
Turning off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth when you're not using them, that's another easy way to reduce exposure.
Okay.
And this one might be hard for some people, but try not to sleep with your phone right next to your head.
Ouch, that one hits close to home. I am so guilty of scrolling before bed, phone practically under my pillow.
It's a common habit, but think about it.
Yeah.
Your brain is doing all this important work while you sleep, and all that EMF right there could be interfering.
Yeah.
Maybe a good old-fashioned alarm clock on the nightstand would help. Yeah.
Okay. I'm starting to feel like I need to EMF-proof my entire bedroom.
Right.
You also mentioned distance being important.
Mm-hmm. The strength of EMF radiation drops off significantly as you move away from the source. Okay. So even small changes like keeping your phone in your bag instead of your pocket.
Right.
Or moving your Wi-Fi router away from where you spend a lot of time can make a difference.
So it's all about being mindful of your surroundings and making little tweaks to your habits.
Yeah.
What about those EMF shielding products you see advertised? Do those actually work?
There are a lot of products out there making big claims,
yeah,
but the effectiveness can really vary.
Okay.
Some might offer a little bit of shielding, but there's no magic bullet that completely blocks EMF.
So no EMF-proof tinfoil hats, then?
Probably not the most fashionable solution.
Okay.
It really comes down to making these consistent changes to your habits in your environment.
Right.
And I know it can feel overwhelming at first, like, oh, great, one more thing to worry about.
Yeah.
But think about it this way.
Okay.
We're constantly bombarded with information about what we should eat, how we should exercise, how to manage our stress.
Right.
This is just another piece of that puzzle. It's just another way to be proactive about your health.
I like that perspective. It's about taking control, not getting freaked out.
Exactly.
And I'm sure the more we learn about EMF, the better equipped we'll be to make those choices.
Definitely.
Speaking of learning, we've thrown a lot of information at you, listener.
We have.
Where does this leave you? What's resonating with you the most?
What I find really fascinating is how quickly technology is evolving.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of EMF in our environment is only going to increase in the coming years.
That's a good point. It does feel like we're all in this giant experiment and we don't even know all the variables yet.
Exactly. We've got 5G networks rolling out, the Internet of Things connecting more and more devices wirelessly.
Wow.
It's a whole new level of exposure.
And it's not like we can just unplug from the modern world completely.
Right.
I mean, I love my phone and my Wi-Fi as much as the next person.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
You know, staying informed about the potential risks, taking reasonable precautions to minimize our exposure.
Yeah.
It's like wearing a seatbelt in a car.
Right.
You don't expect to get into an accident, but you take that precaution just in case.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But the challenge with EMF, at least right now, is there's still so much we don't know about its effects on the human body.
That's true, and it's why more research is so crucial.
Yeah.
You know, we need large-scale, long-term studies to really understand what this constant exposure to low-level EMF could be doing over time.
Okay, so while we wait for science to catch up, what can we do to stay informed and make smart choices about our tech use?
I think being a critical consumer of information is key.
Okay.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, both exaggerating and downplaying the risks of EMF.
Right. So how do we know what to believe?
Look for credible sources.
Okay.
Peer-reviewed scientific studies, government reports from reputable organizations like the World Health Organization.
Mm-hmm.
Be wary of sensationalized headlines or websites that are trying to sell you something.
Okay, so it's like with anything else. Do your research. Look for evidence-based information. Don't just blindly trust everything you see online.
Exactly, and be wary of anyone claiming to have all the answers or offering some miracle cure for EMF.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
It's about each of us making informed choices that work for our individual lifestyles and risk tolerance.
And I love that you said risk tolerance because I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Some people are just more comfortable with uncertainty than others.
Yeah.
But at least having this knowledge gives us the power to make those decisions for ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's about advocating for more research and transparency from the companies that are developing and deploying these technologies.
That's a good point.
We have a right to know what we're being exposed to and what the potential long-term consequences might be.
That's a great point. This isn't just a personal health issue, it's a societal issue.
It is.
We need to be thinking about the bigger picture, the long-term implications of our increasing reliance on technology and wireless communication.
And it's not just about human health either.
Wow.
There's growing concern about the potential impacts of EMF radiation on wildlife and the environment as a whole.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that.
You know, there's some research suggesting that EMF from things like cell towers might be affecting bird migration patterns and bee populations.
So this really brings home the point that it's all connected.
It is.
Our health, the environment, the technology we use, it's all part of the same system.
Exactly. And that highlights the importance of taking a precautionary approach.
Okay.
You know, when we're dealing with something as widespread as EMF radiation, erring on the side of caution is probably a good idea.
I think that's a great takeaway from this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've learned about the different sources of EMF radiation, the potential effects it could have on our bodies,
Yeah.
and the steps we can take to minimize our exposure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clear there's still a lot we don't know.
Absolutely. And that's where you come in, listener.
Oh, we're putting you on the spot now.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
We've given you a lot of information to digest.
Yeah.
But the most important part is what you do with it.
Okay.
So what does all of this mean for you?
Right.
What questions do you still have? What actions are you inspired to take? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Continue the conversation on our social media channels. Share your experiences, your concerns, your insights.
Let's keep this dialogue going. The more we talk about EMF, the more we can learn, and the better equipped we'll all be to navigate this increasingly complex technological landscape.
And here's a final thought-provoking question to leave you with.
Okay, hit us with it. What's the question that we should all be thinking about as we kind of wrap up this deep dive?
Well, if technology keeps advancing at this rate, and our exposure to EMF just keeps increasing,
Right.
what does that mean for our health in the long term?
Wow.
You know, what responsibility do we have as individuals and as a society to
Right.
really understand and manage these potential risks?
It's a huge question. It's like we're standing at this crossroads.
Right.
Right? We can just kind of blindly embrace every new gadget
Right.
and every wireless wonder that comes along. Or we can take a more mindful approach.
Exactly. And that mindfulness means staying informed, asking those tough questions.
Right.
And then making conscious choices about how we're using technology.
I love that. It's not about being anti-tech.
Right.
It's about being tech savvy.
Yeah.
In a whole new way.
In a whole new way. Exactly.
Yeah. Being tech savvy isn't just about, knowing how to use the latest app.
Right.
It's about understanding these invisible forces that are at play.
Right.
This energy that's all around us.
It's like we've been so focused on what technology can do for us that we haven't stopped to ask what it might be doing to us.
Yeah, and I think we started asking those questions today.
I think so too.
And hopefully our listeners are feeling empowered to continue that conversation. Right?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And the more we understand about this unseen world of EMF, the better equipped we'll be to make healthy choices for ourselves, for our families, and even for the planet.
So to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Into EMF radiation. We hope you learned something new and maybe even had a few light bulb moments along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those questions coming.
This is a conversation that's just beginning.
Absolutely. And until next time, stay curious and stay informed.